This learner is a 10-year-old intermediate skilled netball player. She has played for 3 years and has been a goal shooter for the last 2. This year, she struggled with being in a higher age group and playing against girls who were taller than her. Her current shooting technique, throwing from chest height, has meant that many of her attempts at goal have been missed or intercepted by opposition players. This learner gets quite frustrated in her practice. If she misses too many shots in a row, she will stop trying to reattempt. She also has decreased self-efficacy due to her previous success in shooting. According to Fitz and Posner's 3-stage model of learning, the learner would be in the cognitive stage. She is starting to get an idea about techniques that work through trial and error and is making many errors. Similarly, she would be in the coordination stage of Newell's 3-stage model of learning, since she is identifying the relationship between higher ball release and decreased number of opposition intercepts. This learner is a global learner and is a visual and kinesthetic learner. This means that they need to have the whole picture of the movement skill and need to see it being performed as well as performing it themselves to get a feeling of the movement.
Netball shooting is an open skill which requires a player to aim and shoot a netball into a goal on the court. Gross motor skills are used for shooting as it focuses on multi-limb movements to aim and shoot. A clear start and finish of the skill puts shooting in the discrete skill category. Shooting a netball involves a series of movements, starting with holding the ball in your dominant hand and supporting it with your non-dominant hand. Next, you raise the ball above your head and bend your knees and elbows at the same time, preparing to shoot. Push up and extend the knees and elbows, flicking the wrist and releasing the ball when your arms are fully extended.
The training approach for this program is to emphasise guided discovery learning. The learner is given choice about the location of practice shots in all sessions, however the coach will suggest different distances from the post. This allows the learner to discover the finer details of the shooting technique in a supported way. Verbal cues are used to focus the learner's attention to the feeling of the movements, which is internal attention. This way of learning will aim to help the learner develop their skills without adding too much frustration. If the learner is getting frustrated, they are able to practice from a different location until they feel confident again to return to the previous position. This helps reduce the effect of their rate limiter, which is feelings of frustration at failed attempts. To test that learning is occurring, the participant will not practice on a Friday in preparation for the transfer and retention test on a Saturday. The retention test will occur during the warm-up activities, and the number of successful shots from a variety of positions, which are directed by the coach, will be recorded, and the number of unsuccessful shots will be recorded. The transfer test will be conducted during a drill, including another player. The learner will shoot from a number of positions with a defender attempting to intercept and defend the shot. The number of successful and unsuccessful shots will be recorded. These tests will occur weekly. The way that skills are practiced can influence the learning of that skill. Vera and colleagues looked at types of practice and their impact on skill acquisition, retention, and transfer in young children learning soccer skills. It was found that variable practice was more effective when the child had experience with the skill, and that combining variable and constant practice, acquisition of the skill was greater than either alone. They also found that there was no difference between the two groups in terms of retention and transfer testing. For this program, both constant and variable practice have been included. Constant practice, typically used for simple skills, is used at the beginning of the program to allow the learner to develop an understanding of the movement pattern, since netball shooting is a simple skill. Variable practice is then introduced to emphasise learning the skill in different positions to simulate game-like situations where there's less control of the exact shooting position.
Massed practice involves continually performing a skill where the rest time in between trials is shorter than the trial itself. A study by Singer looked into the difference of skill retention and transfer between groups who use the mass practice technique versus distributed practice. Participants practiced the novel skill of bouncing a basketball and shooting, and while immediate acquisition of the skill was found the day after the trial in the distributed practice group, a retention test a month later showed the effectiveness of massed practice, with that group performing at a higher level. This type of practice often enhances the learner's fitness levels and reinforces the skill through repetition. Discrete tasks like shooting a netball are short enough to limit fatigue of the learner, but by continually shooting the ball, it allows for retention. Massed practice was used for this learner to improve consistency, and it can help the learner get closer to performing the skill at the autonomous stage level.
More bend, more flick. The use of cue words enables coaches to direct their learners' attention to details about movement patterns that will enhance learning of that pattern. Cue words that are specific to the task being performed and utilised immediately before skill execution increase the likelihood of improving performance. Cue words that are used too often during exercise execution can distract learners and lead to decreases in performance. For this learner, the cue words bend and flick are used to highlight the key points of the movement, bending the knees and elbows simultaneously and flicking the wrist for the follow-through of the shot. The coach gives these cue words to the learner, and the learner uses them before taking a shot, saying them out loud to begin, then transitioning as they develop their skill to saying them in their head. Since this learner is a kinesthetic learner, the cue words help them focus on the feelings and actions of the movement rather than focusing on a point to aim.
Demonstrations are used when teaching motor skills to give the learner a visual idea of how to perform the skill. Acquisition of a skill requires coordinated movement patterns, which can be obtained by a learner from demonstrations. This idea was developed in a study which looked at the amount of valuable information that was obtained by learners who viewed demonstrations of the skills they were performing before attempting the skill. Results from this study showed that learners improved their coordination of movements from pre-test to a retention test. Demonstrations can guide learners to develop the best technique for optimal performance. Lee says an effective demonstration builds a perceptual blueprint for the learner to mimic from their memory. In the long term, demonstrations can be effective when they are by an expert or someone who is just above the learner's level. Our learner was shown a demonstration of how to correctly shoot a netball before any practice of the skill began. In netball, it's important that players learn the correct technique where they must bend their knees and elbows at the same time while flicking their wrists to release the ball. All of these aspects are essential to shoot the goal, and it is important that the learner develops these integral skills to shoot well.